everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jimmy Lautzen. I'm a lawyer at Aluko Oyebode. As you know, we'll be discussing the regulation of cryptocurrency from a Nigerian and South African perspective. And joining us are 4 expert panelists who will be sharing their insights and knowledge on the topic. In the next 3 to 4 minutes, I'm going to briefly introduce the panelists and hand them over to the moderator for the panel discussions. First on the panel is Mr. Aluko Oyebode. He heads the office of the Chief Economist at the Securities and Exchange Commission, Nigeria. Prior to joining the SEC in 2016 as head of risk management, he spent 13 years in various roles at the Central Bank of Nigeria, including helping manage tens of billions of dollars in reserve assets and macroprudential stress testing, helping to secure financial system stability. He set up and successfully managed a couple of small IT firms for 5 years before joining the CBN. Over the years, he has also been a subject matter expert at various trainings, workshops, and seminars around the world. Next on the panel is Seshri Govender. She's a senior associate at Webber Wentzel. She specializes in the impact of disruptive technologies on the local and global financial services sector. She has advised on the regulatory implications applicable to cryptocurrencies, digital assets, blockchain systems, including decentralized custody services and initial coin offerings. She has extensive regulatory advisory experience in financial services, banking, credit, as well as expertise in payments law, and has advised on the structuring of remittance products, e-money, and digital.
So that everybody confirms that.
Various articles commenting on regulation and fintech, blockchain, and cryptocurrency in the South African market, as well as the development of smart contracts and stablecoins. Third on the panel is Oludare Shembore. He's a partner in the corporate and commercial fintech, banking, and corporate finance practice of Aluko Oyebode. He heads the firm's power team. He also advises on matters such as privatization, local and foreign currency syndicated lending, structured project finance, mergers and acquisitions, structured trade finance, due diligence issues, advisory services, compliance, foreign investment advisory services, real estate, and the regulatory framework related to utilities. He has over 19 years experience in international financial transactions, such as non-recourse and recourse financing, acquisition financing, mezzanine financing, and so on. He specializes in energy and natural resources, power and infrastructure, and project finance. Last but not least is Chimezie Chuta. He's an advisory board member at Kinesis Money Caymans and formerly regional director for Africa at Paxful Inc. He's also the founder of Blockchain Nigeria User Group and the pro-tem chairman for the Organization of Blockchain Technology User. He's the Africa Lead Technology and Innovation at Blockspace Africa Technologies and CEO of both Tech Build Innovation Partners and Lagos Triple Varsity. Mr. Chuta has been integral to various government initiatives in the blockchain space and is a member of the FinTech Roadmap Committee of the Nigeria Capital Market, set up by the SEC Nigeria. He's also part of the Blockchain Virtual Financial Assets Regulations Working Group, also set up by the SEC, and the NIDA National Blockchain Strategy Team. Moderating the panel is Ina Arome. She's the head of Aluko Oyebode's fintech practice, and she's also a core member of the technology, media, and telecommunications practice. Her practice focuses on all areas of corporate and commercial law, and she has significant experience advising companies in financial services, telecommunications, media, and technology sectors on their various cutting-edge technology offerings and services. Before I hand over to Ina, I would just like to let you know that if you have any questions as panel discussions are going on, kindly post them in the Q&A chat box on your screen. And if you have a preferred panelist whom you would like to answer the question, kindly indicate as you're sending in your questions. Thank you. Over to you, Ina.
Thank you, Faye, for the introduction. So governments around the world have issued statements, laws, accepting, restricting, or prohibiting cryptocurrency, mainly through their central banks. Today, we will discuss the regulation of cryptocurrency in Nigeria and South Africa. Mr. Omeano, one of the most important roles of the SEC is to protect the investing public. And given the fact that cryptocurrency transactions continue to take place through P2P exchanges without any regulation, it may be argued that the SEC is not performing one of its fundamental responsibilities. What is the SEC doing to ensure prompt regulation of this market and to prevent a shadow economy from running free? Also, wouldn't the SEC agree that unless it regulates the crypto market, it is certain to lose out on potential revenue, which has obviously come to stay?
Thank you, Ina. That's a supercharged question. Yes, it's true that the SEC has the responsibility to regulate capital markets in the country. And with that responsibility, the SEC came up with, in September last year, you remember, we came up with a statement, defining digital assets. First, I must give you a background that this was not easy in coming because the problem of regulating cryptocurrencies, it's a worldwide one. All regulators around the world are, thinking and trying to find the best ways to regulate. So yes, we come up with that, but subsequent happenings, i.e. the release by the central bank, made us put a bit of a hold on it. Okay, yes, we are aware that there's that tendency for people to go on the ground, but we have not at any point said we were not going to regulate. We only said that we would study the situation with the central bank and other stakeholders and, really find the best way to go about it. So that to me is not, does not mean we are leaving the area for people to just run free. I must also say that, yes, actors go on the ground whenever regulation appears to be adverse, I would say, or contrary to what they would like. And yes, it's true that we know that some will go on the ground, but we think that the genuine actors are not interested in going on the ground. We have still had people coming to us to ask, to suggest how we can go about regulating. So what we would expect from the good actors is that they would approach the regulators. I mean, the SEC is open to suggestions. The central bank also said they are open to, I'm not holding brief for them, I'm not speaking on their behalf, but they also told us they are open to suggestions. So if the market has suggestions on how they think that this regulation should happen, I think this is the time to make that known to the regulators. But I can assure you that we are not sleeping over this. We are actually working, thinking, engaging. That's very, very important. We're engaging with stakeholders. We're also engaging with regulators in other parts of the world. We are looking at what others have done and how they have fared in those things. We're exchanging information. We have very strong platforms we are using to exchange information with other regulators. And we know, we hope and we know actually that we'll finally arrive at something that works for everyone. I will end by saying this about regulation. You know, when the central bank release came, we got a lot of hits. I would say knocks from the market, from I would say crypto enthusiasts, from people. I just want to drop here that the regulator does not look at things the way players in the market look at things. The regulator looks at things from a particular lens. You know, I would say it's a form of utilitarianism, where you're looking at what's best for the greater number of people. So I would say, for instance, the way cryptos were being run before the CBN intervention and the way they may be going on now, I don't know. I don't know if you have the data. We saw, or the central bank, I would say, said they saw that it posed a risk to financial system stability. And what the regulator always says is, if, for instance, we're 200 million in the country and 100 million people benefit from how something is being run, the regulator will ask if it's better to let the 100 million people benefit, and if it's at the detriment of the other 199 million. Okay, would it be better to let that 1 million people benefit versus 199 million people? So regulators think that way. So it's important that we look at it, we see that the regulator looks at the big picture all the time. So we are not living, I will conclude by saying that we are not leaving that area unregulated. We are just coming up with the best way to go about it.
Thank you. So basically, the SEC hasn't put a hold. It hasn't put a hold on it. It's still going to. It's discussing with regulatory authorities.
With stakeholders, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shembora. In light of the current global stance on crypto, is the prohibition of the processing of cryptocurrencies by banks and financial institutions by the CBN a disadvantage? If yes, why?
Hi, Ina, thanks very much. I would say that it is a disadvantage. And if we look at, and it's more like us being an ostrich and sticking our heads into the sand and not being realistic with ourselves. Currently, out of Nigeria is ranked 3rd after US and Russia in 2010 as a 3rd largest country for cryptocurrency trading in the world. And it's estimated that we're generating more than $400 million worth of transactions per annum in this sector. Now, these are transactions which are not I think let's even look at the fundamental. There's no tax being paid on these transactions at all. So if you look at other jurisdictions, for example, in the UK, for example, one of the key things that the FCA has done is taking a view that it's important for them to regulate cryptocurrencies, not just because of the potential revenue that it could potentially make the country, because those transactions are taxed. Capital gains taxes are paid on the trading of the assets. But it also helps them regulate and protect the everyday customers in the UK citizens who trade in cryptocurrencies. So for example, cryptocurrency derivative transactions are banned in the UK, and they're banned from a perspective of they're not permitted to retail customers. They're permitted for high net worth, sophisticated investors who understand how these trades are done. But retail customers are protected and prevented from trading in those transactions. That is one of the things which the regulations in Nigeria needs to do. The regulators in the UK, US, the EU recognize the fact that one of the disadvantages of cryptocurrency transactions is that it can be used as a means of funding terrorism, anti-money laundering, etc. But rather than banning it and putting it into a shadow economy, what they've done is to regulate it and provide AML checks, CFT checks, and protections around the transactions. There are also instances where crypto transactions could be used as a means of defrauding customers or people who participate in this. You have stories of where people have situations where they tell you that the crypto exchanges, you may do a transaction with a crypto exchange and you find out that the crypto exchange is a fraudulent exchange. You don't have any means of protection or seeking recourse against them. You may find out that there are instances where the crypto exchanges go bankrupt. You don't have any means of recourse against these people. There are stories of once about a crypto exchange owner who misplaced his pass keys to his wallet, and as a result of that, all the customers on that exchange could not get access to their wallets. So the means of regulating this will help to protect customers and people who get involved in this. And I think the reality is that we cannot ignore the fact that despite there being a ban, there's active, significant trading going on in Nigeria by Nigerians in this type of assets. The other thing which the regulating the sector and does properly is that it helps to stimulate innovations. In the UK, in the US, you have, and the EU countries, you have instances where cryptocurrency or even cryptocurrency, Bitcoin technology, crypto technology is used as a means of different types of financial instruments. It's used as a type of promoting different types of technology, smart contracts, for example, as a means of accessing different types of products and services on the internet. So if you put a total ban on this type of on the entire sector, on the entire type of asset class, what you create is that, and you're doing this because of one particular type of crypto assets, which is the payment tokens, payment cryptos. You're creating a situation whereby you are totally abolishing and stifling innovation of people from being able to do any other thing around cryptocurrencies. In the UK, you have, and the EU, you have sandboxes for cryptocurrencies whereby people are allowed to come up with new ideas on how they can use this type of asset to help to create new types of products, new types of innovations. And finally, the other point I'll make is that in the UK, even recently, you had the Chancellor of the Exchequer who was proposing or proponing about having what he's calling the Bitcoin. The EU is also thinking about also having its own form of a cryptocurrency as well, and other jurisdictions are doing that. So I think the idea of not regulating cryptocurrency and just doing an outright ban, I think is an error on our part. And I think what we should be looking at is how do we regulate this in order not to stifle innovation, protect customers, and also regulate any adverse impacts of this asset class.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Chimeze, the government's concern around the use of cryptocurrency, like Mr. Shebera has highlighted, use of cryptocurrencies for illicit activities, and then also loss of control over monetary policy applied to capital overseas. Are these valid concerns, and how can the risks posed by cryptocurrencies be mitigated and managed?
Okay, thank you so much, Ina, and thanks for everyone that is on the program. And I use the opportunity to also welcome all my co-panelists. Yes, the concerns that the central bank expressed in the circular that prohibited the use of banking systems for crypto-enabled companies and the individuals is genuine, because everywhere in the world there is this concern about how to regulate this unique type of asset that has emerged. And for most regulators, it's a nightmare, and policymakers have been finding a way to go around this, because it's like this thing has come to stay and we were not prepared for it, and they don't know exactly how to go about it. Now, the first thing we have to understand is that because this industry is still at its infancy stage, knowledge is still developing. So just like it's difficult to go to institutions and you can sign up for programs and study stuff, you know, most of the things that are happening in the blockchain and crypto industry are happening as in now. So the knowledge goes with the growth of the industry. And policymakers and regulators somehow are not known to be people who are quick to catch up with innovation and development of current trends. So when CBN says we are concerned that people are using cryptocurrencies for illegal activities, for money laundering, for terrorism financing, and they affect their financial services system, is because the tools and the strategy that they have been using can no longer be effective in this new type of asset class. Let's say, for instance, the concern that people are using Bitcoin for terrorism, because they think that Bitcoin is an anonymous technological tool for moving value. They conclude that people can use it, or people are using it for terrorism financing, or for money laundering, or for any of those illicit acts that they are concerned of. Whereas, of all the different kinds of money that the world has seen, whether it's gold, whether it's barter system, whether it's even the fiat system that are issued by governments, it is only Bitcoin that provides a transparent, open access to the database of the transactions that are run on its network. And that is a huge improvement from the opaque system that financial systems of the world have been using since. Again, they can make such conclusion because they do not understand the technology, because there are open technologies today that enables auditors and forensic investigators to actually track the movement of funds over the internet, because the tools are there. And as far as you are on the internet and that act was perpetrated on the internet, the right tools will always be able to unmask the people behind that transaction. So what then is the problem? The skill sets are not there. So they require upskill and right skilling for them to be able to catch up with the growth of this innovation, because the thing has come to stay. So they need to begin to ask the right questions. How can we do this and how can we do that? Now, on the side that they themselves are regulating, which is the banking system, they have actually put in place anti-money laundering systems and know your customer service. KYC is that every banking system and every financial providing company adheres to. I can tell you that every crypto company, every blockchain-based company in Nigeria enforces strict financial anti-monetary financial system. Every one of them do 100% KYC. Okay, and they are compliant to the financial services standard. Now you find out, okay, why is it that the banks are the ones that are in custody of customer data? How can you not be able to trace who is doing what based on the data that you have? So it's either someone is not ready to do his job, or someone is pushing the blame for not doing his job to someone else. So in the nutshell, the disadvantages of cryptocurrencies has been over-exaggerated by most regulators, especially Nigerian Central Bank. It's over-exaggerated. And rather than throw the baby away, I keep saying, find out how you can utilize this nascent technology to even improve the type of solutions that you are providing for your people. I mean, monetary system is for us to be created for the benefits of the people. The same way cryptocurrency is here to benefit the people. That's the same way that you need to find a way that the monetary system that you are creating can accommodate crypto-based assets, because they are here to stay. I mean, give this whole system the next 5 years, or at most the next 10 years, you see that the entire financial system will be absolutely disrupted. And that's one thing they don't want to hear, but that's the reality that has come upon us. So they need to go back on the drawing table, do more stakeholder engagement, engage more consultants in the industry to find out how they can best go about regulating this, just like most other countries in the world have been able to do. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chimeze. Yes, you're right. Some countries have further developed their AML-CFT regulations to accommodate cryptocurrencies. So let's just watch the space and see what the CBN and SEC have in store for us. Seshri, hi. So we're going to go over to the South African perspective, and I would like you to discuss the use and operation of cryptocurrency in South Africa. Is it subject to any regulation?
Thanks, Ina. So while there's been a number of proposals and developments and consultations and communication around the development of cryptocurrency in South Africa, the current position is that the regulatory environment remains at what its initial position was in 2014 when the regulators first looked at this, which is that it's not legal tender. It doesn't have any particular regulated legal nature, so it's not a security, etc. And the approach is very much a user beware approach to regulation, which is essentially crypto assets, cryptocurrency is not regulated. And if consumers want to engage with it and use it, they do so at their own risk. So if something happens, they can't seek recourse, they can't seek assistance from the regulators. And so because of that, the environment is very much regulated based on contractual relationships between the consumers that are using it and the crypto asset service providers.
Thank you. So what's the proposed regulatory approach? Who will be the regulatory authorities charged with regulating crypto in future? And are there any recent developments in the South African market?
So in general, the approach that's been taken to the development around cryptocurrencies is there's a lot of factors that go into it. And one of the main ones is the importance of balancing the risk of crypto assets, so consumer protection, like the other panelists have mentioned, money laundering, etc. But balancing this against the potential for crypto assets to promote and foster financial inclusion and to bring about innovation in the financial services industry, which is very much required. So it's balancing these two sort of almost competing interests, and while at the same time trying to determine whether you need to develop a new type of regulatory regime or house crypto assets in an existing regime. And what we started to see is with proposed sort of regulations, etc., is that the intention of the regulators is to house crypto assets inside existing regimes rather than creating a crypto-specific regulatory regime. So for example, our AML, anti-money laundering regulatory requirements, the intention is for those formal requirements to become applicable to crypto asset service providers, and for crypto asset service providers to also be pulled into the financial services regulation or the regulatory environment so that the Financial Conduct Authority can regulate these crypto asset service providers from a market conduct perspective. So that's the kind of developments we're seeing around that. And also it's important to note that because crypto assets is being pulled into the financial services sector, it's important to note that South Africa's financial services sector underwent a massive reform in 2016, 2017, when we adopted the Twin Peaks approach to regulation, the idea of establishing a prudential regulator and a market conduct regulator. And so where we are right now is we're still in the process of implementing this change in the regulatory environment. And that phased in approach to the current regulatory environment is still in flux. And we're also looking at changing and reforming the payments industry. So what you have is developing this crypto asset regulatory regime within a broader regime that is also in flux and changing. So you get this sort of approach that allows for flexibility around developing crypto asset regulation. But because of this, you also have this uncertainty around it.
Thank you, Seshri. Mr. Umeano, kindly clarify for the sake of the public how the CBN's decision impacted the SEC's plan to regulate cryptos. To the extent that cryptos can be used as a means of exchange, but also as digital securities, why can't the SEC go ahead with the regulation of cryptos as securities without the CBN's intervention, since it is well within the purview of the SEC to regulate securities in Nigeria? And also, who do you think should take the lead in regulation, the SEC or the CBN?
Okay, thank you, Ina. That's a good question. First, you have to know how we go about regulation. Neither the CBN nor the SEC is an island in regulation. When CBN, in regulating the people they regulate, that's the banks and people under the monetary authority, they most of the time have recourse to the SEC for one thing or the other. There are no objections, there are verifications and all that. And it's the same thing the other way around. So if you're a capital market operator, you would know that one of the requirements for registration with the SEC is bank accounts. Another one is capital. Another one is verifications of the capital. So it will be a bit difficult for the SEC to register companies or firms or entities that do not operate bank accounts. You would remember that after the CBN's release, the SEC made a release and said that we would continue with our planned actions in the fintech space, but that for entities who are affected by CBN's pronouncement or release or circular, we would have to hold on until they're able to operate bank accounts. We cannot regulate people who cannot operate bank accounts. There are laws in the country, and we must operate within those laws. So on the question of who will take the lead, the SEC's field and the CBN's field are clearly defined. Okay, so the CBN is a monetary authority. So anything that has to do with currency, that has to do with payments and all that goes to the CBN. Anything that has to do with investments come to us. That's why our release was very clear. We said we would assume that what you're doing is investment unless you prove otherwise. So that's it. That's so there's nobody who is taking any lead anywhere. It's just that if the item in question falls into the CBN's field, they will take the lead. If it falls into our field, we will take the lead. So, and please, I want to correct an impression that, especially from the one of the panelists, no regulator wants to stifle innovation. And there's also this thing about, oh, the regulator doesn't know anything about cryptocurrency. Oh, it's rocket science and the regulator knows nothing. And that's why the regulator is just banning it because he doesn't understand it. For about 4 years, we have had a committee, a joint committee of regulators thinking through cryptocurrencies, thinking through blockchain technology and what to do. So it's not like the regulator has been sleeping. We have had people come from Mauritius, people come from Malta, from Estonia. We have had all kinds of engagement. We've gone to places, we've done deep studies, but we must do what is good by our financial system. No amount of name calling or, I have a funny guy on my secondary school forum who said that all CBN and SEC are Ludos. So no amount of calling us Ludos will make us do what is wrong for our financial system. And I think that the industry needs to understand this. Okay, so I would advise that rather than standing aloof and telling us what is happening in the UK, what is happening in Canada, which are markets that are different from our market, which have fundamentals that are different from our market, I think that it will be better to, for the market to sit down and say, what are the concerns of these people? How do we address these concerns? What are the issues? How do we engage them? Because I can tell you that the regulators do not like to just ban things. No, I want to correct that impression. Regulators also even want to encourage innovation. The SEC, for instance, has a FinTech and Innovation Office. And we've had, as far back as 2 years ago, we already started receiving requests for registration from people who are using blockchain technology for health, for education, for all kinds of things. So it will be funny for somebody to come and say that it's just because they don't understand it, they are banning it. So I think it's the wrong approach, actually. So I would advise that the industry find out what are these issues that we are talking about, and let's all join hands to make these things work. So that would be it.
Thank you. Before I go to Mr. Shembore, if you have any questions, please put your questions in the type your questions in the Q&A box. Mr. Shembore, so flowing for what Mr. Umeano has just said, who do you think should take the lead on regulating cryptocurrency?
Okay, and to add to what Mr. Umeano said, what Oke said, and I'd like to commend the SEC for being one of the most innovative regulators we have in Nigeria. One of the things they've come out with recently was a crowdfunding rules that permits to regulate crowdfunding and how it operates. And so you do see, and if you also look at it, the fact that they had also were coming out with regulations on cryptocurrency as well, which shows that they are being innovative. They are thinking through what needs to be done. They do recognize the fact that there is a market here and that there is a need to regulate this industry. Where I have a concern with is, without saying anything negative, is that the reality is that perception becomes reality. The perception of the public is that the Nigerian regulators do not have an understanding of cryptocurrency. And as a result of that, they have banned it. They have some concerns around it, but rather than dealing with the concerns, they have banned it. And I'm not sure that that is the right approach to take. And to be honest, that is the perception the market has. And you can't gainsay the fact about perception become reality. Who should take the lead on this? I think it depends on what part of cryptocurrency you're talking about. Cryptocurrency as an investment tool, as an investment asset, as a securities, is definitely within the purview of the SEC. And I think the SEC should be the one to take the lead on that, regardless of what any other regulator says. You do have clearly crypto exchanges who are looking to trade in cryptocurrency as an investment asset class. And if those trades are currently happening, with a recent report, Nigeria had the second largest number of trades, about over $500 million. America had over $3 billion worth of trades. You cannot have a market where you have over $500 million worth of trade not being regulated, happening within the shadow market. It's just not something that you should allow to happen. Now, imagine if you did this and you regulated this properly, right? Not only will you have an increase in the amount of trades that happen, you potentially create more avenues for other people to get involved in that industry, thereby creating jobs, thereby creating wealth. You have a situation whereby right now, a lot of Nigerians are not doing this, are not taking part in this part of the market. It's all external players who are playing in this field. So that is revenue and wealth that's coming out of Nigeria. If the other part of it that I will also say is that there's opportunity to tax this trade, thereby creating revenue for the federal government. So imagine if we had a market of over $3 billion worth of trades, and this were capital gains tax being paid on these trades, right? That is significant revenue for the country. And it is easy to track these trades. It is easy to track and to collect this capital gains, because all you just do is you put your regulations in and you tap the crypto exchanges to make sure that they collect this money on your behalf. So in that instance, on the tax perspective, I would be expecting the FIRS to be involved in that kind of discussion and looking at how do they tap this form of revenue, this source of revenue for the country. The third part of it, I would say, is that it's a mix of between, so there's a CBN part as well. How could the CBN look to use to make, so, you know, the reality about this is that we need to understand and accept the fact that Nigeria that the world market is moving. We're becoming a digitalized economy, global economy. People are using things of e-money, digital money, and things like that. The UK is currently thinking about coming up with what they're calling their own digital money, Bitcoin. EU has theirs. The US is coming up with something as well. Nigeria, we pride ourselves and say we're a trendsetter. We are the giant of Africa. Why doesn't the CBN start looking at that possibility? How do we start moving from, and we say we're trying to move away from cash. How do we start looking at creating digital currencies for the country itself and see where that comes to? And the last point I'll say is that because cryptocurrency is based on blockchain technology, we're just talking about, we've only been looking at two parts or two aspects of this cryptocurrency, this issue. One, the payment tokens, and two, investment securities. But the blockchain technology can be used for so many things that it could massively change the Nigerian economy, the way we do business, the way we operate business. And that is where you have the National Assembly coming into play to see how does this technology work? How can we help to pass laws that set a stage for using this technology to get things to be done better in Nigeria? So I think the issue is multifaceted, and different regulators and different players need to take different roles depending on what part of this technology we're talking about. And that's what I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you. So I agree that blockchain technology as a whole can have the restrictions on crypto can ultimately even lead to a ripple effect on the use of blockchain technology as a whole in Nigeria. Seshri, so I would want to have your perspective on the use of cryptocurrency in SA. It's growing daily. What's the major use of cryptos in South Africa? Are they used solely or collectively as securities, monies, or utility tokens? What other services have been developed around the use of cryptocurrency?
Sure. So essentially, part of the regulatory developments was around identifying key use cases or the predominant uses of crypto in South Africa. And what we see is predominantly it's still used as an asset that's bought and sold over cryptocurrency exchanges between willing merchants or willing sellers and willing buyers. It can be a payment mechanism for goods and services, but it's not legal tender. And we've also seen crypto assets largely being used in the ICO, in the initial coin offering space for the purposes of capital raising. But in addition to that, and as was mentioned, what we're starting to see is this move towards utilizing the underlying technology of crypto assets, the decentralized blockchain technology that sits there. And we've started seeing the development of decentralized apps that are essentially making use of this decentralized technology as a way to move value around a community, around an ecosystem, and the crypto asset being used as a form of tokenizing this value. So in addition to sort of seeing the original sort of position of what cryptocurrency was initially designed for, what it's sort of moved into, which is essentially being a sort of an asset or an investment structure, we're now seeing the development of these kind of services that's specifically targeted at the underlying technology, the blockchain, the decentralized technology under that.
So, what has been South African government's response to crypto? What are the identified issues raised in cryptocurrency?
So, the main issues that have arisen, especially in the last 2 years or so, is around consumer protection. And the main, there's a number of people are, scam artists who provide very high promises, very fake promises regarding, if you give me your cryptocurrency or if you invest in this, you'll make this kind of growth. And it's what it's essentially doing is where initially the regulatory position was balancing consumer protection and money laundering risk against financial inclusion and that potential, we're now seeing the consumer protection aspect increasing. So that risk is becoming more and more prevalent. And the need to protect consumers is becoming more and more prevalent. And this sort of balancing act is essentially, well, what's happening is financial inclusion and the ability of crypto assets and blockchain to be inclusive is very much dependent on the regulatory regime, a regulatory regime that's sort of user beware. It essentially creates an exclusionary environment where only people who have access to resources and people who are able to take the risk are able to participate in it. And at that point, it's no longer inclusionary. So what we've seen in the past 2 years is this sort of move to lean in favor of protecting consumers until such time that the inclusion or the ability of this financial inclusion aspect becomes, at the same level, because a lot of people have lost a lot of money and because of scam artists that have arisen.
Thank you, Seshri. I think the issues are very similar, even in Nigeria and worldwide. Mr. Chimeze, what in your opinion will the failure to regulate or delay in regulating the crypto markets cost Nigeria? And what recommendations do you have for both the SEC and the CBN?
Okay, thank you, Ina. First of all, we need to look at the size of the cryptocurrency market. This is a $2.2 trillion industry and is accessible by anyone, anywhere in the world that has access through the internet. So the question is, will it be wise for a country with about 200 million people with minimal opportunities for growth and development of its citizen lock itself out of this huge economy that is out there? This industry is bubbling and is spurring a whole lot of new products and services being built on the blockchain decentralized infrastructure. So first of all, lack of regulation will create a barrier for most Nigerians, because in as much as individuals and there are packets of youth here and there that are involved in the market trading because that's the extent to which they can get involved at this level. You have to also understand that there are a lot of institutional investors that are already reaping the benefits of involvement in cryptocurrencies. There's a company known as MicroStrategy. If you take a look at the Bitcoin Treasury's webpage, you'll see a whole lot of US-based companies that have made declarations to their Securities and Exchange Commission of their Bitcoin holdings. And if you look at that, MicroStrategy tops that list with over 192,000 Bitcoin collections, about 92,000 Bitcoin collection at the very moment. Now, every time the price of Bitcoin moves to a new all-time high, they print a new revenue margin for their books. Now, the amount of money we're talking about here is not this $1,000, $2,000 that the youths are using to trade every day. You need to create an enabling environment for corporate organizations in Nigeria to see the reason why this industry should not, the potential of this industry becoming able to transform their own fortunes and also, at the end of the day, bring value to the country where they are located. They need to find out how they can get involved with this. And they can't do that if regulations and policies are not in place for them to be able to freely operate. Secondly, one of our panelists here has talked about the fact that the tax regime could be expanded to accommodate businesses that play in this space. That's exactly the point that we're making, because this is a country, Nigeria is a country that is currently sinking economically. And rather than find innovative ways that they can create value for their own citizens, they are shutting down opportunities for them. Why don't you innovate and find out ways that you can actually tax these companies, regulate them? I mean, regulating them is not record science. You cannot, everything can be done in phases. Okay. There's no regulatory instrument that is cast on stone. You cannot, area comes back to you. So regulating them and taxing them is another way of bringing in huge finance into our system. And then we're looking for FX every time you are looking for USD and rationing the ones that we have. Meanwhile, the industry itself that we're trying to shut out is a $2.2 trillion industry. Why can't we find a way to get involved in this? Thirdly, you can see that innovation is part of the drivers for transformation for most developed countries. Blockchain and crypto-based asset companies in different parts of the world are already creating new solutions and new kinds of services that people are already using to change the way they live and the way they work. I mean, these technologies, you see, we have challenge with our infrastructure in this country, and everybody who knows this country knows that it's a fact. And because many of these infrastructure do not even exist up till now, but blockchain technology and crypto asset has given us the opportunity to rebuild them and rebuild them on a stronger framework that will be able to help this country to stand out. I mean, in the next 2 years will be in the election year. Now, you start talking about what processes are we going to use. Meanwhile, the blockchain-based voting system is one of the most secure systems that we can tap into to be able to run an election system that can produce the kinds of leaders that will be able to take the kinds of decisions that will take this country out of the dungeon where they are. Now, I want to make a little response to what one of my co-panelists said about, the general perception about regulators not being knowledgeable. See, the reports have shown that only about 19% of the world's population know or have heard about cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, and this innovative kind of digital assets. Only about 9% of the world's population own any of these cryptocurrencies. Now, if that percentage is actually something to go by, how much of that 19% do we find in our policy-making environment? How many of them do we find in our regulatory environment? So there's nothing wrong in accepting that we are all learning. Nobody claims expert knowledge at this level. So there's nothing wrong with regulators accepting that we are learning this thing. We are still learning. It's a learning process for us, and we are not experts. I mean, we don't expect that we have experts among our regulators, because there are no experts really, even in the industries. Everyone is at one stage of development of their knowledge or the other. So it's not offensive, and it's not any way to make it look as though you don't know some other things. There are so many other things that regulators know that are not common knowledge to people, but this particular one is new to everyone. So we should be comfortable to say that we're all learning, and there's nothing wrong with that, because nobody knows everything. So I think in conclusion, we stand to lose a lot, both for the economy and for the development of the manpower that we have in the country. And of course, locking out this technology will further stifle the opportunity that we have to rebuild our failing infrastructures. Thank you, Ina.
Thank you, Mr. Chimeze. Thank you to all the panelists. We've now come to the end of our panel discussion, but we're going to go straight into the Q&A segment. The first question is for Mr. Umeano. Says one of the most critical challenges to the effective regulation of cryptocurrency is the data collection of crypto assets, transactions, and positions. Crypto asset data collection will require international cooperation, as oftentimes these assets are traded peer-to-peer globally. Cryptocurrency is also driven by dynamic and rapidly changing technology. How is the SEC looking to adopt technology and international collaborations towards the effective regulation of cryptocurrency in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you, Ina. Before I go into that question, let me just mention that because I went through all the questions and everybody is talking about a ban. There's really no ban on cryptocurrencies. The CBN said that banks should close accounts of exchanges. If there was a ban, then it would be a crime now to do even the peer-to-peer that is happening. That would be a crime. So CBN knows that there's peer-to-peer happening. SEC knows, everybody knows. So let's not be using the word ban. They only said close accounts of exchanges. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that. And also to clarify another thing, there's nothing stopping any blockchain technology or any ideas in blockchain happening right now. Like I mentioned before, we have applications for people that want to use, blockchain to do one thing or the other. We're just talking about a tiny portion of blockchain technology, that's currencies. That's the area. So nothing is stopping anybody from coming now and saying, oh, I want to do this data, like what you're asking about data collection. In fact, we have one who says he wants to collect data on financial markets using blockchain and make it available, like akin to what Bloomberg and Reuters do. You understand? So let's calibrate this, let's partition these things. Okay, so nobody stops anybody from doing that. Coming to your question about international collaborations, yes, there's a lot of engagement, like I said before. We have engaged so many, I won't call names of agencies and governments and countries, but there's a lot of engagement. These engagements are quite easy because we already have these things for the traditional, the conventional markets, the conventional securities and all that. So the same cooperation we have with bonds, with equities, with currencies, with other countries, it's the same thing we have. So if like for instance, I was at the Senate hearing on this same issue. I accompanied the DG of the SEC, and that was the Senate hearing that was with the governor of the central bank. One of the senators mentioned what a crypto person or somebody in the industry had told him about the amounts of money that he passes through his exchange and all that. The NFIU was there, the central bank governor, all the other agencies that would know were there, and they said that wasn't true because they can see what's going on. There's a lot of data exchange. There's a lot of information that we have that that people don't even know. So there's a lot of collaboration around the world. Like one of the panelists said, we are all learning. Everybody is learning around the world, and we are not afraid to say that we are learning. Nobody knows what best to do, and we are all collaborating. We have communications with all kinds of agencies from every part of the world. Like what they are saying about Nigeria being number 2, number 3, it has attracted a lot of interest in what we are doing in this space. So we have a lot of collaboration. So yes, when we finally arrive at the best way to handle currencies, like I'm saying, it's just currencies. When we finally arrive at the best way to handle currencies, I can assure you that data, having links with others and collaborating on data collection will not be a problem.
Thank you. Actually, there's a question that's related to SA law requirements. It says, as you've mentioned, regulating cryptocurrency should be a balance between the nature of the technology and an attempt to protect the interests of customers. Has there been any examples in the markets where a customer has successfully instituted action against an entity that sells crypto assets in cases where the customer was aggrieved? Can only civil action be taken based on breach of contract law?
So one of the most significant crypto-related events that happened last year was the investigation into Mirror Trading International, which was a company here that defrauded a lot of cryptocurrency participants. And what happened there, at the end of the investigation, because of the nature of crypto assets and because of the nature in which crypto assets moves around, the end of the investigation came to a point where it was, it's not impossible, but essentially it becomes a situation where it's going to be fairly difficult or impossible to retrieve the Bitcoin that people gave to this organization. And part of that is due to the technology, but also part of it is due to the fact that there is no regulatory environment around this. So the regulator, or you can't essentially rely on the regulator to take steps to make this right when something like this happens. It is very much dependent on the contractual relationship you have with the crypto asset service provider. And if your contractual relationship either indemnifies the crypto asset service provider for something like lost keys or anything like that relating to crypto assets, then they're indemnified, and based on contract, you can't really move or do anything. Alternatively, if the risk that you're looking at is purely relating to the use of the crypto assets and doesn't cover everything. So for example, it only covers people being defrauded, but it doesn't cover if a particular exchange loses people's keys, etc., then you're also not covered. It's largely, when it comes to the question of whether any action can be brought against anyone, it's really a question of what the terms and conditions you've agreed to and what it says. And what we've seen is it doesn't cover a full sort of spectrum of risks relating to trading in cryptocurrencies. And so, I mean, and the crypto asset exchanges, for their own safety, need to protect themselves with indemnity. So it is very difficult to sue and take legal action in respect of cryptocurrencies and crypto assets.
Thank you. So this next question is going to be posed to Mr. Shembore and Mr. Omeano, but I would like Mr. Shembore to take it first. It's from a law firm in Mozambique. Says, we do not yet have any legal regime or guidelines on the subject. The central bank only commented on Bitcoins in the sense of not recommending their use. There's no aspect or guidelines. My question is, what kind of approaches can we take when we're confronted with this matter? How do we approach our central bank for the need to regulate this aspect? Do you believe that cryptocurrencies will be the future and that the use of and acceptance is unavoidable? Should the continent of Africa take a joint approach on the subject, or is it too early?
I saw that question, and I think I'll start with the easiest one to answer, which is whether Africa should take a joint approach on cryptocurrency. I think it's too early for Africa to take a joint approach on this. We're all at different places within the spectrum of all our financial systems, that it's kind of difficult to try and take a common position. The EU can take a common position because they have a common framework for their financial services, financial regulations, so they can take a common approach on how to deal with this, but not Africa. To the other parts of the question, I think the reality about this is that, yes, I think cryptocurrencies have come to stay. And I think there will be more innovations on how it operates. The reality about it is, as an asset class, security asset class, it's come to stay. The question becomes, how do you regulate it and how do you manage it and how do you manage the risk in that? The funny thing about it is, as an asset class, there are even further development of asset classes in cryptocurrencies now. You now have crypto derivatives, and people are trading in crypto derivatives. So you're not even just trading in the basic asset itself. People are creating derivatives on top of those assets and are trading in those derivatives. So the reality about this is that I think we can't deny the fact that it has come to stay, and there will be more growth and innovations in the type of products that come out from it. So the third part of the question was, how do you approach this? I think there is going to have to be a play of both industry players and regulators engagement. The key thing, and I've mentioned this before, and I will say it again, The SEC in Nigeria, if you use them as an example, right, have been very, very innovative about things. The reality about it is that businesses will grow and the regulations play a catch up to how things, to the growth in the markets. So there are new developments, new things come up, and then regulations catch up to it. Now, the SEC has shown that they are able to play catch up very, very quickly. The SEC, for example, in Nigeria has, in coming out with regulations, even before they come out with the first draft of their framework, which they share with the public and ask for comments, usually get industry experts to sit down with them and talk about how do we regulate this. They take approaches they talk to people from other countries, other regulators in other countries, and take lessons from them. And I think if you adopt that kind of approach in Mozambique or any other country that is looking at this as how do you resolve this problem, I think is the best way to deal it. You get the industry players in your country, you get to understand what they're trying to do. You get knowledge from people within the industry who are experts in this and tap their knowledge. You approach other regulators in other countries and see how they're dealing this. And with that, you can come up with a regulatory framework. That, for me, I would say is the best way to deal this.
Thank you. Mr. Omeno, do you agree with Mr. Shembore's views on how to approach? And
I think he has handled it brilliantly. He has handled it brilliantly. I have nothing to add.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chimeze, this question is for you. What form of public advocacy is ongoing regarding this issue? Is there any active engagement with the regulators? Is there any communication to public on crypto by its operators?
Okay, thank you again. The industry is not sleeping because we understand that this industry is ours to protect, and we have to really work hard to make sure that the right thing is done. And we started quite early to engage with regulators and policymakers. I mean, we've been on this journey long before it came into the public purview. As far back as 2018, we had already started engaging with SEC, started engaging with even CBN, for instance. And it's not as though we're waiting for this time before we act. Now, the CBN had requested for a position paper from the industry. And the industry came together to also begin to do the drafting of that position paper. And through the FinTech Association of Nigeria, we had an increased broad-based collaboration to work on a document which has already been made available to the CBN at this point. And the industry-specific position paper is also a work in progress, because what we want to do is to provide content that will be useful to all the regulators, not just CBN, but something that will be useful to both the CBN, to need that, to SEC Nigeria, to the taxman, to the insurance guy. You know, everybody should be able to see that document and be able to understand what the industry view is all about. And beyond that, also, we keep engaging the public directly through our events and through our platforms where we teach and explain to people how best that they can go about it. Because like one of our panelists have already said, that nothing stops you from creating products or services in the environment. But of course, it is not as easy as that. So they constantly need to have some type of guidance to know what are the existing regulatory frameworks that they can leverage at this time. Because even though blockchain and crypto is new, it doesn't mean that there were nothing that was in place that looked like it before. We have some kinds of regulations that were there before, but the specifics are what have not been taken care of by the regulators. So generally, the industry is at work. We are working together. In fact, under the blockchain industry coordinating committee, which is a body that coordinates all the blockchain industry organizations in Nigeria, we have put forward a document that covers crypto-based scams, which is one of their concerns. And that document was put out even before the CBN brought out their circular. In other words, there are some of the concerns that the regulators that the regulators have, and the industry operators and participants also have those concerns also. And the synergy is going on to make sure that at the end of the day, we have something that will be satisfactory to all the parties concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We can't answer all the questions, so we would send the panelists the questions in the Q&A box, and they'll try their best to answer, and then we'll forward the responses to the participants. Thank you for a thought-provoking and engaging discussion. I will now hand over to Mr. Oyebode Oyetunde, a partner in the firm's capital markets practice, to give the vote of thanks.
So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. And I think it was a very engaging and insightful session. A very, very big thank you to all our panelists. Starting first with our regulator, Mr. Omeano. It was very, very useful to sort of hear that, look, the door isn't fully closed on it. For the larger audience, it's not as if there's a blanket ban on crypto. It's just that the regulator at this point in time needs to just take some certain steps to just sort of protect the wider market. And it was useful to hear that there's a lot of engagement. And I think what a lot of people will take away from this session is that a lot of engagement is going on whilst things are going, and hopefully we would get an update sooner rather than later, in order to enable us to be able to move on with crypto. It was useful to hear you, Chuta, the passion for this thing. You just sort of spoke through. You spoke about transparency. You spoke about the use of crypto. You spoke about some of the possible mitigants, and hopefully that intersection that we're all hoping for, from where you would like to be, and at the same time to where we would like regulation to be. Mr. Shembora, you spoke about other markets, the tax perspective. You shared insights as to how perhaps we could manage innovation and regulation, and we thank you for your thoughts. Cesri, we thank you for bringing the international perspective, what is being done in South Africa. Whenever we speak with our colleagues in SA, it's always nice to know, it's always interesting to know that some of the concerns we have in Nigeria are not only solely Nigerian, but those concerns are also in other markets. And I think that also came true in the questions that were raised. Ina, thanks for raising the questions and setting the tone for what was a very insightful session. And I'd like to thank every single person that tuned into this. Thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll keep the conversation going. And like Ina said, if you sent through a question and it wasn't answered, hopefully over the course of the next week or two, we'll try and reach out to you. This session has been recorded. We'll try and see how extracts or recording can also be put so that people can sort of refresh their minds. And we'll also send out extracts on the relevant social media channels. Thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you very much. Cheers, bye.
Thank you, Mr. Oyebode and Ina. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers, bye.